Hello everyone, this is Michelle here today and I'm making 3 very different cards using the Celebrate stamp set and Celebrate layering stencil set, both from Hero Arts. So these coordinate with each other, but I'm going to be using them separately today. I just wanted to show how you could get 3 very different looks from the same products. This first card that I'm making is a fun party card. So I'm starting with the first stencil. I'm using these 4 inks. I'm using the Cornflower ink on this first stencil layer with the strings and the stars. Then with the banners, I'm using Paradise ink, this lovely sort of teal green. Then on the next layer that it adds some more details, I'm using pink Grapefruit here. And on the last layer that adds some of the tassels, I'm using Azalea ink. I just thought these were fun party colours to add to a card. Now for the sentiment in the middle, I've got the Let's and the Party stamp, and I'm trying really hard to line them up. I'm sorry if my head gets in the way. I'm tipping my MISTI up so I can see clearly where those 2 stamps are lined up on the grid lines of the MISTI to make sure they're nice and straight. I'm using Azalea ink to stamp the sentiment, and because I wanted the sentiment to be nice and bold, I actually stamped it a couple of times. Now, I wanted to layer this card up a little bit, so I've got out the nesting postage stamp infinity dies to cut the panel down. I'm just going to hold the die in place with a little bit of mint tape here, and then just one on either side so it doesn't sort of slip either way, and I'm going to run it through my Platinum 6 die cutting machine. Now, when you're cutting something like a rectangle or a square with a straight edge, try and put it on an angle in your die cutting machine like I've done here, because then you won't get that really loud bang as the straight edge goes through your die cutting machine. Alright, so now I'm carefully removing my masking tape, and I'll just pop out my now die cut postage stamp. And I wanted to add a bright colour behind this. I decided to use the Azalea cardstock to coordinate it with the Azalea ink that I used in the stenciling and also for the sentiment. I've actually cut the middle out of the panel because you're not going to see that. So I'm just going to adhere a little bit of scrap paper in that hole, and that smaller postage stamp that I cut out, I've just put that back in my stash and I can use that at a later date. So my card is pretty much done. I'm just making sure that it's all lined up nice and neatly and adhered well, and yeah, pretty much done there, but I decided it needed just something a little bit more. Isn't that the way? We always try and add something a little bit more. Thought it needed some white faux stitching, so I've just added these faux stitching lines around the edge, and now I'm done. So that one, I'm all done. I think it'd just be really good for a kid's party, a child's birthday. But now let's move on to my second card. I wanted to go really pastel on this one because I thought I'd make a baby card. So the colours that I'm using on this one are Peony, Dandelion, Arctic and Dusty Blue. So I'm using the same process for the stenciling, just making sure they're all lined up nice and neatly, and using my ink blending brushes to add the colours. I went really light-handed with most of the colours. The only one that I added a little bit heavily was the Dandelion, because it is a really pale colour. So I was a bit sort of firmer with that one, but really light-handed with all the rest. So really aiming for pastel colours here. Now for this one, I really didn't want a bold sentiment like the last one. Even though I really usually like a sentiment to have a lot of contrast. But with this one, I wanted it to stay nice and soft. So I've grabbed out this Celebrate die, and that's from the It's Our Anniversary Stamp and Cut set. And I've cut both of the pieces out from the middle here. I'll separate them out in just a minute. But now I'm going to just cut the shadow layer from some coloured cardstock. So I have chosen some Arctic cardstock. I'm just popping out that word die from the shadow die. You can see I've cut the Arctic cardstock on the left there with the shadow. And now I'm going to be assembling my card. So I'm adding some tape runner adhesive, making sure I get all those little bits around the word, lining that up on my card base. All 3 cards that I've made today are 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm just going to pop that shadow layer into the negative space that I have in the middle of my card. And once I've done that, I'm going to take the Celebrate word, I'm going to pop out the word bit and get rid of the shadow layer. I'm going to pop out all the little bits and pieces inside the letters, and then I'll adhere it over the shadow layer. It's kind of like the eclipse technique. The eclipse technique is when you just cut a word out and pop it up on some dimension, but the panel is basically a continuation of the pattern of the background and the word, so it doesn't really stand out very much. With this, I've got the appeal of having the pattern in the background continuous across the sentiment as well as on the background, but because I've changed up and added a shadow layer behind it, there's a little bit of contrast there, so you don't lose the legibility of the word. So I left it with a paperweight over the top for a little while that glue set, and then I was done. I thought about adding some gems or sparkle, but I decided against that. Now this 3rd card is very different again. I wanted to go for a much more elegant look. I'm starting with this treasured cardstock from Spellbinders. So this set is the rose gold assorted pack, and I've chosen a piece of the matte metallic cardstock. I'm adding it to my Misty. I'm going to be, this time, not using the stencils, I'm using the stamp, and I'm going to be stamping it in embossing and watermark ink from Hero Arts. I added some anti-static powder tool all over the cardstock because I thought because it was a metallic cardstock, it might attract a bit of static. It might sort of collect all the powder that I'm going to be using for embossing. You can see when I tilt up my Misty there, you can see where I've got a really good image from that embossing and watermark ink. And now I'm going to be adding the embossing powder. I'm actually using copper embossing powder, which is unusual for me. Usually I stick with white embossing powder, but I do have quite a big collection of various different specialty embossing powders. So this one is a gorgeous colour from Hero Arts. I thought it would go really, really well with the rose gold cardstock from Spellbinders. Now I'm making sure I heat up my heat tool really well because I am fairly sure that this metallic cardstock will warp, and you can see it's warping right in front of our eyes there. But that's okay, don't stress. It's because it has a coating on it. I find that cardstocks that have a coating on them or have sort of plastic in them are much, much more likely to warp. So I'm just holding it down on my relatively cool glass work surface to help flatten it out a little bit. But I am actually going to be die cutting it, so it will flatten out a little bit more and it'll be fine. Okay, so I have my 2 numbers here, 6 and 0. So I have got these and I've cut them from Hero Arts glitter paper from the fall pack in the colour copper. So yeah, I have multiple friends who are turning 60 this year, so I just thought, yeah, it'll be useful to have a card ready to go for at least one of those people. Okay, so I pulled out my Rectangles Infinity dies and chose a rectangle to go around my stamped and embossed background because I always like to have a little bit of white on my cards, even if it's just a little border around the edge. Now I'm going to be stamping a sentiment to go over the die cut 60, the glitter 60, and I'm going to be embossing this in the copper embossing powder so it'll match with the background. So this sentiment is from the Let's Celebrate stamp set, which is one of my go-to stamp sets for birthday sentiments. Now I had a little bit of embossing powder here that was just stuck and being a little bit tenacious, so I've just got a wooden skewer that I keep on my desk to get rid of tiny little specks of embossing powder, but it's all gone now, and I'm now heating up my embossing powder and making sure it's all nice and melted and ready to go. So once that's all melted, I will just use my paper trimmer to cut that down. I'm cutting fairly close to the stamping because I don't really want to cover up the glitter of the 60 too much. So yeah, the smaller this piece, the better really. I decided I needed just a little bit of detail. Again, same as the first card, just a little bit of detail to finish it off. I'm cutting a banner end on either side of this sentiment. Just a little V-shaped notch on the end. Just, yeah, little something to finish it off. All right, so now once I've cut my little banner ends, there we go, that's the second one done. All that I have to do is to adhere my card together. So I'm using some tape runner adhesive to adhere the rose gold panel to my white card base, and I've got a nice heavyweight card base which will help to keep that rose gold panel from bending the card base, because it is a bit warped. We saw that it was a little bit warped, but I added lots of adhesive to the back, so it should be fine on that card base. Okay, I'm just adding some liquid adhesive behind the 60. I thought liquid adhesive would be the way to go here because I'm adhering over the top of both metallic cardstock and embossing. And both of those, if you use tape runner adhesive over those, sometimes it doesn't stick as well as you might like. So I thought liquid glue would be the way to go with that. Now I'm just putting my paperweight here. This is my Share Handmade Kindness paperweight from Bossy Jossie. Letting it sit there while I add some foam adhesive behind my happy birthday sentiment. And removing the little paper, the release paper off the back of that, and I'll be able to add my sentiment over the top. Okay, so once I've done that, that card is pretty much done. So just making sure I'm lining that up relatively straight. I always hold it up to make sure that I've got it on nice and straight. Look at that shine. It's really cool. Glitter and shine all the way. So here are the three cards. You can see I've got three very, very different looks, but from the same Celebrate products, from the layering stencils and also from the stamp. So thank you very much for watching today, and I'll see you back again next time. Bye.